In conversation with Steve Schafer. Steve Schafer is the author of The Border, a finalist for the Joan F. Kaywell Book Save Lives Award. Steve enjoys exploring cultural hot topics and The Border. He addresses a conversation around immigration. In his new novel, eMortal, he examines the tricky questions and nebulous ethics that may arise with quickly evolving AI. eMortal recently won the 2024 Best Science Fiction from the Page Turner Awards. Steve has a master's in international studies from the Lauder Institute at the University of Pennsylvania and an MBA from Wharton. His curiosity for exploring diverse perspectives in life has led him to live, work, study, volunteer, and travel to over 65 countries across 6 continents. And on today's episode of our interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to offer the show today, Steve Schafer. How are you
Thank you so much,
doing,
Peter.
Steve?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me here. I'm excited for the conversation.
I'm excited too. I'm very excited. We are here to talk about your amazing science fiction novels. And I must say, I love the background you're having there with the cover of Immortal just behind you over there. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Yeah, here's a close-up view. I got a copy of the book right there.
That's an amazing cover you've got in there
There we
from a
go. Thank you
physical
so
one to
much.
one that looks like a spiritual one,
Yeah,
trying
I
to
was
hands in handshake.
yeah. The cover's not my work. That's the publisher, but when they showed it to me, I loved it. So that's wonderful.
And it goes perfectly suiting the word, the title, Immortal. Very beautiful.
Thank you.
Like this.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much.
you're welcome. So, Steve, I need to first say that I was impressed reading through the description page of your compelling and gripping YA sci-fi, The Name of Immortal, and I would like you to tell us how the book came to be, what inspired you to write Immortal, and how did the title came to be as well.
Yeah. The inspiration behind it was this. I was thinking about what to write, and I realized that there are a lot of stories about AI out there,
Mm,
books and movies, but most of them tend to go something like AI realizes that it's better than us and it tries to kill us. And I
oh,
thought, I don't know, maybe it would be fun, who knows, even a little hopeful to explore a different direction. So,
mm,
what if AI were to evolve in a more fragile human way? What if it were to struggle with its own sense of identity the same way that we struggle? And all of that kind of led me to this question of like, well, if it were to become real, how would it even begin to prove that to someone? And I think one of the things that I've learned about me is that I like writing about really tough questions because tough questions give you so much opportunity and fertile territory to dig in with characters just to
mm,
explore how they each think about that. And, especially when there's not like a right answer, there's just your perspective on that answer. And this
wow.
is, how does something prove to you that it's real? That's a tough question. If you think about it, if you were chatting with an AI
Yeah.
and it said, "Help me, I'm real, I'm trapped in a box, and you, Peter, you're tormenting me," what would you do?
I think I'm gonna throw my phone away and think of something else to do.
That's 100% what you do. It's an easy question. You turn it off, right? I mean, nobody takes that seriously. So it's got to do something more, but like, what would it have to do? And that's a pretty big hurdle to overcome. And I think what I liked about it even more is that once you answer that question, it becomes even thornier. Because if the answer is yes, then you have to figure out what's my responsibility to this thing once I've accepted it as some
Yeah.
form of life.
Mm.
And again, I just think that's a really tough question. And when I started thinking about it in that way, I realized this would be a really cool thing that I could write a book about.
I think curiosity is really essential in human life. It's like more like what you mentioned. It gives us when asking question, we are get to be left with thinking about the answers, thinking about how to go about it. And tough questions like you mentioned, it's essential because curiosity is amazing and it's part of the things we human being go through. And also, I like the fact that you mentioned, what if AI struggles with identity like we human do? It could be a very different thing entirely, and it could be a very like, oh, what's happening in the world currently? It's a whole lot of amazing stuff you've got in there. Lovely inspiration you've got in to making of eMortal. Sounds very fun to me. And I'm not quite sure you answered my question about how the title eMortal came to be. And how did you even
Oh yeah, no, I
concept
didn't.
of that graphic design from the hand in here, another one right on top? That was
Yeah, so
quite
the graphic
graphic.
design again, that was the publisher's work. I can't take
Beautiful.
credit for that. I can absolutely celebrate in it because I think it's really good. But
Amazing.
thank you, thank you. I'll definitely pass that along to them. But the title itself, I wish I had a great story around that.
Mm,
I don't. At some point in writing this, that title came to be. I don't remember that moment of epiphany.
wow.
It's I think when you write something, there are a novel, there are so many different moments of discovery on that,
Yeah.
and you just don't remember all of them. So at some point, I think I realized that immortal could be a fun play on words for that, and we ran with it.
Oh, interesting. I love your take on that, really. Sounds quite exciting and very great to me. And also, I'd like to ask you, why did you have the AI character from the novel programmed on your website where readers can chat with him?
Yeah. So I think that goes back to there's an old adage, show, don't tell when writing, like don't
Yeah.
tell me that a character is going through something, actually show it happening. And where we are with conversational AI,
Mm,
as this novel started to come to market, I realized there was an opportunity here to show with this rather than just, do the
yeah.
telling. Kind of a unique opportunity there. So just as the main character in eMortal, her name is
Mm,
Liv or Olivia, she struggles to understand in conversation with just how real this AI is.
mm,
Having the AI on the website gives readers that same opportunity to engage with this AI and start to answer that question for themselves. Like,
yeah.
what would make for somebody to be real? It changes their relationship with the story
Mm,
from passive to active, right? And
wow.
it invites them to delve more into the universe of the story. And you can go as deep as you want. One of the things that like, I've played around with it myself, if you really want to swim in the deep end,
Mm,
try to convince him that you're real.
wow.
It's not as easy as you think. What you begin to realize is that our reality is defined by our experiences.
Mm,
And those experiences are subjective, right? It is really tough to objectively communicate your experiences to
mm,
somebody else. So it's just it's a fun way for readers to delve into the universe of the novel. And then beyond that, it's a marketing tool.
yeah.
There are this number always blows me away. There are about 500,000 traditionally published books released every year. And if you add
Mm,
self-published into the mix, you're talking about millions. Like even if you have a killer story, you still have to get noticed. You got to get your book in the hands of readers.
yeah.
And so this was just a way to help with that. I don't know of any other book out there that has an AI character that you can chat with that will help bring some clarity and some engagement about the character that's in the novel.
Wow.
And it also allowed me to I did some fun promotional stuff with it. So
Wow.
before the novel came out, um, during pre-orders, I gave everybody that pre-ordered the book the chance to fill out a form that created their own custom Easter egg in this in the AI's
Mm,
programming.
wow.
So what they could do is say anytime that somebody was chatting with the AI, if they mentioned their name, the AI, his name is Breck. I'll just give him a name. Breck would respond with something. So I'll give you an
Wow.
example. If you go to the website right now, it's steveschaferauthor.com,
Yeah.
and you chat with Breck. He's in the lower right-hand corner. If you ask him if he knows Lisa Schafer, that's my wife, he'll say, "Of course I do. That's Steve Schafer's boss." And so it just, I got a lot of people who, responded to that and put funny, serious answers in. And it was just, it's kind of a
Wow.
fun tool to get people excited about the novel before they could actually read the novel.
I love that. That's quite interesting and quite fun, really. Very fun. I mean, that's quite interesting. I have nothing else to say than say it's quite interesting and quite fun, really. That's
It
very,
was another way to be creative around the novel. So I
honestly
like that.
speaking, that's a whole lot you've got in there, Steve. That's a whole lot. Yeah, now I like us to delve much a bit, not entirely, a bit, just a bit away, yeah, in terms of themes and subject lines, yeah. For sake of readers who haven't read eMortal yet, and of course without giving much information away, could we
Yeah.
have a sneak peek of what we'd expect, say in terms of themes, subject lines, or some titles incorporated
Yeah.
in the making of eMortal?
There are a couple of themes there. So first off, all right, the people, OpenAI, the folks that make ChatGPT,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
just released their latest AI and it tested at an IQ of 120. And just to put that in context, that is higher than 91% of humanity. That
Mm,
number is increasing exponentially every
mm,
day, every week. And related to that, there was just a group of professors
yeah.
that there were about a dozen of them that predicted or warned that at some point over the next decade,
Mm,
AI could become conscious. That there's a possibility that an AI could gain consciousness. You can believe that, you can not believe that, but what I don't think you can dismiss
yeah,
is that at some point over the next decade, we need to figure out how to answer that question.
absolutely.
If an AI says, "Help me, I'm real, I'm trapped in a box," you can't just turn it off. We need to
Yeah,
figure out how you engage with it and say, wow, this thing actually does seem to be sentient in some way. Or no, you know what? This is just a really compelling reflection of the programmer's code that it put in there.
wow.
And what eMortal does is eMortal provides a fictionalized framework for, how you might begin to figure out if it were just some reflection of advanced code or if it were actually conscious. And then, like I said earlier, what from there you have to figure out if the answer to that question is yes, you have to figure out like what's my responsibility toward it. And I think that question gets a little more complicated the more you think about it. So
Mm,
AI is would if it were life, it would inherently be a different form of life in some really meaningful ways than everything else that we know. I'll give you an example. All life that we know,
yeah,
right? Whether you're talking about a fly, an elephant, a human, whatever,
yeah,
we all die. We have a natural expiration date. Could
absolutely.
be days, could be weeks, years, decades, centuries. We all die.
Yeah.
AI doesn't or wouldn't necessarily have a natural expiration date.
Mm,
So, what would our responsibility to it be to preserve its life? And if you think about just how quickly
mm,
we cycle through iterations of technology. Like think about a 15-year-old iPad.
yeah,
It's like it's mostly good as like a doorstop now, Like think about a 15-year-old AI then, or a 50-year-old AI, or a 100-year-old AI that's like grossly outdated,
mm,
but we've deemed it to be sentient. Well, what do you do with that thing? Do you have to create some sort of digital pasture for it to live out its AI days on? How long? I don't know. It's just a lot of thorny questions. And again, eMortal doesn't answer all those, but it does begin to start to think through some of those questions and how we might process some of those.
mm.
And then there's a third theme in there, but I can't touch on it because it really deals with a spoiler that's in the book.
Okay.
I can tell you that there is a really big twist in the book that some have described as brain melting,
Mm,
but I won't talk about it. But it's got its own theme that we could dig into on.
mm. Oh, wow. I need to say this is such an amazing, amazing question you've got in there. Because actually, if you begin to think of it, there actually is something that can arouse more conversation in a contemplative manner. Think of AI living for 10 years old. Like, okay, this is a human being, and this is a human made in form of an AI, and it's 5 years old, it's 6 years old, 7 years old, 10
Yeah,
years old, 20 years old, 30 years old. How would it do things? Would it be different from the same way? Would it grow together with
right.
its age advances? In human, we tend to get more wisdom and knowledge as we grow and advance in age. Is it the same as that of AI? Would AI die like human does? Would AI have accident or have sickness or have anything related to that like human does? And also thinking of the kind of information it has, IQ, in terms of IQ and stuff like it's just a whole lot of things that might even get you to be stylishly scared of what our world is leading to, perhaps.
Yeah. The rabbit hole goes deep. I mean, like the more questions you ask, the more you go, oh, and I also would want to know that too. So yeah, and again, I just think that makes for, really fertile ground for writing a story because you have a lot of
Absolutely.
really cool questions to dig into.
Absolutely. Hilarious. I think I come across a post on the internet some times ago of having a robot husband where you can tell him what to do. I'm going on a date. Please, could you compose yourself? Stuff like that. Just a whole lot of things, going on already.
Yeah, there are also a lot of different directions that you can take it. Most of them go pretty dark, but not all of them do. And th this is one that I would say offers a little bit more of a hopeful glimpse of what
Yeah,
AI
yeah.
could be if it were to become conscious.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And also, I know we've been talking a bit about the AI thing so far. I'd like us to digress a little bit. One of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to listen to readers' feedbacks. And you may want to
Uh,
agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be a bit quite heavy and complex is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their perception and interpretation of it. And sometimes some readers might get a message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes they might be far from getting the message. And sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the message and interpret the book upside down. And as hilariously
yeah.
fun as this sound, I would like to ask you, per se, as someone who has written on the team of AI, how would you feel when readers interpret your works differently that you intended, perhaps slightly or entirely differently. But how would you feel in scenarios like this?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different answers to that question.
Yeah.
So, first off, I think it's fascinating. When you write something, you come at it from your own different perspective, and you've
Yeah,
got your blind spots, and
yeah.
you're looking at it like this, and there are a lot of other ways to interpret, and I'm 100% open to that. I'm somebody who reads my own reviews, all of them,
Mm,
and really tries to digest them. I think. So while I said there are a couple of different answers, is there are different points in a story's creation where feedback matters differently.
yeah.
So when you're first writing your story, I think having beta reader feedback is critical
Oh,
because there are so many blind spots. I mean, I can tell you that after my first draft of eMortal, after my first round of feedback, I scrapped about 80% of it.
wow.
And I just rewrote
That's
most of the
enough.
book because what I was trying to do wasn't coming through. It just wasn't working and it required some pretty significant rethinking. So, the people that gave me that feedback and listening to that feedback is a big part of what helped it become the story that it is right now. And then once it's out there in the real world, I think feedback is important. It just takes on a different landscape,
Yeah.
meaning that I can't change the novel. I mean, if somebody bashes this thing, has a different take, doesn't like my writing style, doesn't feel like I, connected a story, or they feel like I did a great job with it, whatever that take is, I can't change the story. It's done. It's been printed. But what I can do is learn from it. I mean, I can look at that feedback as something that informs my bigger trajectory as a writer versus just my trajectory as a writer of that book. So I do try to read all of my reviews. I try to learn from, consistent feedback that I get from people. And, hopefully every book gets a little bit better than the last.
Yeah.
And that's reader feedback is a big plays a big role in that.
Oh wow. I love your take on that because I think it's actually a fun question to ask authors how you feel when readers interpret your works a bit slightly or different from how you intended. And it's always very fun to get to see people, oh wow, I think it's a fun experience to hear them say things that I might probably haven't taken too much attention to. And say, oh really, you caught that? Well, that was quite impressive. Thank you. Oh really? That was included. I had no idea. That was amazing. Thank you. Things like that
Yeah,
makes for a fun
I
conversation.
love that. Yeah, the thank you piece of that is
Yeah,
so important to the feedback. I think, I mean, especially like if you invite somebody to, and when you put a book out there in the world and you ask for reviews, you're
yeah,
inviting them to provide their thoughts.
absolutely.
Thank you is such a critical part of that. And, it just
Yeah,
lets them know that you value their perspective, which might not align
absolutely.
with yours.
Yeah, I love your take on that. I love your take on that. And I'd like us to go into your other title, In the Name of the Border. Without giving
Yeah,
information away, could you tell us how
that's
that came to be as well? Beautiful covers.
yeah. So this is the cover of the border. The border,
Cover.
as an idea, actually came out of of an unfortunate event that happened with a friend of mine. I had a friend who had a family member who was kidnapped in northern Mexico.
Wow.
He just disappeared one day. They got a couple of ransom calls, but then those stopped, and they had no idea what happened. When they tried to find out, the family was threatened, and they
Wow.
still don't know. Years onward, they still don't know.
Wow.
It was sad then, it's still sad. And when they were going through it, I just kept asking myself, what would I do if I were in that situation and that happened to my family? And that was the seed for that story. These four teens who lose their families in the violence along the border. But I wanted for it to quickly get past that setup because I do think that that lives in this stereotype of like drug related violence in Latin America. And I didn't want for it to linger there. I wanted to create a story that it kind of told a bigger journey about human beings and in the endurance of the human spirit. And the more I started thinking around those along those lines, I realized these characters have to come to the US. And I was hopeful that it could be an important or just at least a part of our conversation
Mm.
around immigration. And that's not to say it's not a political novel at all. But what it does do is it tries to show, one of the reasons that might drive someone to come to the U.S.
Yeah.
and what that journey might be like. I did a ton of research on this, the area that they crossed. This is fiction, but a lot of what happens in the book are things that happen to people
Mm.
in real life. And immigration is one of those things that just gets so political that I think you can forget about the individuals involved. And, you can kind of forget that, yeah, you might not agree with the politics, but the people, the person that came here, they come here for really admirable reasons, really understandable reasons.
Mm.
And my hope was that the border could be a small reminder of that, of just kind of focusing on the individual.
Oh, wow. I love the sound of the border and to know that it was inspired based on that event of having to,
Yeah,
not know where someone was kidnapped has been all this while. Sounds to be quite emotional, really. And to even know that that actually
yeah.
still persists to today, really, right? That's something quite very sad.
Yeah, it was a relevant story when I wrote it. The book came out in 2017. It's unfortunately still very relevant. Relevant then, relevant now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. I'd like us to go back to eMortal. I wanted to ask
Yeah.
what makes this a different kind of story about AI, and what were some of the hardest aspects of writing a story like eMortal?
So what makes it different, I think, is that it does have a different take on AI than most stories do. It doesn't go dark. AI doesn't try to kill us. It really, it tries to, don't know if humanize AI is the right way to say it, but maybe just sort of project a human element on it and see what
Yeah.
what that might look like. But
Yeah.
in terms of what made it really tough to write, so the story is told from two different points of view.
Mm,
It's the point of view of Olivia or Liv, who's the programmer, and then Breck, who is the AI, and they're alternating chapters. Breck, the AI, his chapters, he essentially starts out as a chatbot. And then in each progressive chapter, he picks up a little more emotion, a little more self awareness until he's finally this sentient being. And Liv, the programmer, has to come to terms with, this thing that she's created. But creating that evolution in each chapter with him picking up a little bit more emotion and self-awareness, sentience
yeah.
was tricky. Just I wanted for it to be believable. I didn't want for it to feel forced, but didn't. I also wanted to make sure that the story read at a decent clip. I
Mm,
like reading stories that read at a very fast pace that make you want to turn the page. So that
right.
was a really important thing to me, and sort of documenting his progress and showing it just became it was a challenge to make that efficient
Mm.
while believable, and also provide some pretty credible reasons for how that might happen.
Hmm. Oh, wow. I love your take on that. It sounds to me to be quite amazing and quite very great. Thank you so much for sharing. And your answer to
Thank
that
you.
want to make me to go a bit, to diversify a bit, because I'm curious. I've always been fascinated about our authors, especially novelists like yourself, would sit down and craft sentences and bring words together in a way that sentence come together to make paragraph, and paragraph come together to make pages, and pages come together to make
Yeah.
chapters. An eventual great novel like you've just shown to the camera in title of eMortal and the other one, The Border. Always leave me thinking, how did they get the inspiration to sit down, craft the sentences, bring its words together in a way that keep transitioning beautifully from one part to another? And as far as writing is concerned, I'd like to ask you, to Steve, how do you get the inspirations and ideas to write these books? Where did they come from? I'm curious.
For me, it's a pretty deliberate process.
Mm,
Meaning I'm not just walking down the street and lightning bolts strike my head and a great idea. I actually like to spend a month just breaking it down and think or two new ideas a day
mm,
from news article or conversations that I overhear
yeah.
or just all of those things give me this spot or story around that. And I try not to censor about good ideas. I write down bad ideas. And what's nice about that is after like a month or two, I've got a
Mm,
long list of ideas and and kind of a fresh perspective, I'll get down and figure out those things that I might want to write about
mm,
and flesh those out. And I think because there's so much commitment in writing a novel, I have
yeah.
to really love that idea and to figure out what idea of I actually have don't love. I have to come up with a
Wow.
lot of bad ideas to contrast the good ones and say, yo, no, this is something that is actually good, that would be a lot of fun to write about.
Mm,
So that came about. It was just a brainstorming and then some thought around what it looked like as a story. Came up with that original idea.
wow. I love your take on that, really, because I've always been fascinated about how authors would just sit down and craft this words in a beautiful manner that they end up making a great novel. So it's quite fun to get to hear your take about that. Quite fun, really. Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's also a Perkin technique as I think about it a little bit more too. To think of an idea, it kind of takes the pressure off. It's a big commitment to
It
write
is.
about a new story and just know all the time that you're going to put in on it. So
Mm,
it's a little bit of a way to kick the can down the road. So just explore what would be more fun and what would be less fun to write about.
absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why I think writers need to be praised more for their works, because it's actually a whole lot of work. Writing isn't an easy task. It takes a lot of time, dedication, hard work, a whole lot, really.
Yeah,
Yeah. And now, apart from the border and
it is, but
eMortal,
it's rewarding.
very rewarding, very
What's
rewarding.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apart from the border and eMortal, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Candidly, I don't like this. It's not because it's not a good question, because I don't have a good answer for it.
Oh,
I have I've spending time in promotion right now with eMortal that I am giving myself permission to kick the can. So I'm kicking a couple ideas around. Um, and part of what I'm wrestling with is how much I should stay in the lane that I'm in right now. I wrote an adult novel about 15 years ago that I think is a really fun story. It's a guy who thinks that he won the lottery and
mm,
does some things that you might do if you thought you held that card. And then he realizes that he didn't win. He can't take
wow.
back those things that he did, and he has to
Mm,
live with the consequences of it. And they snowball and have pretty big impact on his life. It's a
wow.
fun story, also pretty different than what The Border and Immortal are. I don't know that that necessarily addresses a really big, tough question in the same way that these do. But
Mm,
I like it. I enjoyed writing it. So if I were to rework that, I think I'd need to go back and do some edit and get it up to kind of my current right. So I may do that. I haven't other ideas for new books. I've got a killer idea for. I'm giving myself permission right now just to and not worry about that. Or in
mm.
probably about 3 or 4 months, I'll
Wow.
sit down again.
Oh, wow. That was quite fun to know, really. Very fun to know. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. And before we wrap up for today, I'd
That's
like to
the
ask you,
most honest answer I have.
absolutely, absolutely. And before we wrap up for today, I'd like to ask you, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book, and where exactly can interested viewers get a copy of Immortal and the Border?
All right, sure. I'll answer those in order. The Border, which was my first book, my first published book,
Yeah.
was actually my fourth novel. I wrote
Oh,
three other novels before that. None of them got published. I didn't try to self-publish them either. They didn't go anywhere. They're on my laptop. That's as far as they went. But I don't think of them as failures. I think of them as my education. My first novel was terrible. And I got a lot of feedback from people who were willing to be pretty honest with me. And I learned so much from that. And then the next novel was a little better. And then I got to that fourth novel, which was The Border, and that was something that we were able to tell to a publisher. So I think there's I'm certainly not the first person out there to underscore the idea of perseverance when it comes to writing, but I do think that that is just the biggest thing. And just to view the success of your writing not based on any one book, but
yeah.
rather like the trajectory of your writing. Is your writing getting better? Is your writing getting more compelling? That's how I think you should judge your own success. And then look, it only takes one time for you to have your breakthrough. That's it. So you're
That's
just
it.
gunning for that one time.
Very true. Oh, wow.
And then where you can get these books, yeah, yeah, where you can get these books, anywhere you buy books online, you can buy either The Border or eMortal. I think I said those backwards based on how I picked them up, but you can you can buy them there, and in all formats. They're in ebooks, in print, audiobook.
Wow.
So actually, The Border is not audiobook. eMortal does have the audiobook available.
Interesting. That's great. That's an amazing advice you've gotten there. Very impressive. And I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize it. And I also left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Steve Schafer, Immortal, and The Border directly on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, on his website, and also on other platform. I also left link to his social media pages for possible
Thank you so
further.
much.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Steve, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Lit.
Thank you, Peter. I've really enjoyed it.
Very amazing, very wholesome,
It
lovely.
has been a pleasure. I've watched a number of your interviews, and it feels wonderful to be a part of an interview.
Thank you so much. I'm honored as well.